right. Okay. So today we are going to review for our exam on Thursday, right? We'll take it Thursday here. And so let me go up and pull up our practice exam. Hopefully you've had the chance to look through it first. So your actual exam will be 10 pages long as opposed to 12. I think there's a grand total of 14 questions. So, or like 14 or 15 questions, not that many. A lot of the questions are just simply functions that are worth 10 points. So a lot of function writing, but that doesn't mean that regular expressions aren't a significant part of it. I think at least like 20 of the points are regular expressions. So, and a lot of the stuff that is, and it ends up being that basically that some of the stuff on the exam just doesn't necessarily, we do an easier version here, right? Like we might have a person here that says, open a file, read everything, and add up all the stuff that's, like this question over here. File reading, read all the files in. Right, so I read all these numbers in that are separated, add them up. Right, on the exam, it's a bit easier where I just give you a list of numbers and ask you to add them up or go through them in a certain way. So, but that doesn't mean you aren't going to do file reading on the exam. Told you already a question that would be on the exam, so be aware of that. All right. So, and back here you'll get a lot of nice and useful information too. Okay. So first off, the string Howl's Moving Castle in Python is a valid string. Why isn't it a problem that the single quote character in Howl's isn't escaped? Right? We have quote double quotation mark, and then we have this single quote over here. So why isn't that an issue that that's not escaped? Anyone? Yes. Yep, so let's go ahead. Yeah, so let's go ahead and say that it's because it's enclosed in double quotations. So let's just review that. Exam2.py. So right, if we're looking at this, we have a bunch of stuff. We can put as many single quote characters in here as we want to, as long as it's in double quotation marks. Likewise, if it's in single quotation marks, if we have a string in single quotes, we can put anything we want to in here, so long because it's not a single quote. Okay, so the minute we put in a single quote, it ends up terminating the string. So Python is just very clever about, it uses single quotes and double quotes both for strings, and it just says, oh, if you open a string, we'll close with the other character. If you need to, however, if you are using just double quotation marks, right? He said /quote, whoops, /quote, hello. Right. Another, so what is the main difference between a dictionary and a list? Really don't need any questions on this exam about dictionaries, mainly because we just introduced them. But what was the difference between what is the primary difference between a dictionary and a list? Yes?
The list keeps order, dictionary doesn't care about order.
Yeah, that's a pretty big difference. What can we use as key, what can be used as keys in a dictionary? anything. So we could use strings as keys and numbers as keys, but we can even use other stuff like objects as keys, but we can't use we can only use integers for indices. All right. Here's another one. If L is a list, what does this expression do? L ::, minus 1. What's that notation? What's that special about that slice notation right over there? It reverses it. Very useful one to know. Also a very useful one to know. How do I use slice notation to get the last 3 characters of a string? Let's go ahead and look at that. I want the last 3 characters of a string. So let's go ahead and boot it up in idle. Python 3. Let's go and say s is equal to hello. So let's go with the last. Give me slice notation. That would give me yes.
Is it -3
-3 : like this?
Yeah.
That will work. That will work. Are there any other solutions? There's many solutions to this. Yes.
You could this is kind of like complicated, but you could do like in and then len, or like in len then like your string. Or wait, so never mind.
Like here?
Yeah, but you have the and then colon in -3 and then colon in len string and then end bracket.
Yep, that will work. You can also leave out this. Wait, no, got it. Sorry, you can leave out this. You can leave out the second. You can leave out the len 3. Right, this would say go start the index starting from len of s, which is out of bounds, minus the last character is len -1, len -2 is second to last, len -3 would be third to last. So, or, as we saw, we can just abridge it to -3 over here. And this means go up until, and this means go up until the end of it. If you have nothing there, it goes up until the end of it. If I did -3 to -1, it would give me LL. So by putting that in. So negative indices are a very useful thing in Python. You don't need to know that, but you don't necessarily need to know them. They're useful, though. All right. So what are /D, /W, and /S? So what is first /D? Yes?
Any non-digit?
Yep. So, I've got a microphone. I better remember that. Oof, sorry. So, /D is any non-digit. Remember, /D is any digit character. /D is anything that's not one of those. Similarly, what is /W? Yes? Any non-word character, which is anything that's, so /W underscored, sorry, /W lowercase is any A through Z, in any case, a 0 through 9, or an underscore character, anything that you would use to make a variable. And a /W capitalized is anything that's not that, right? So remember, you use the /lowercase for one thing, and then you use the /uppercase to get the inverse. So what is /S and /S then? Yes?
/S is any white space character. /S is a non-white space character.
Yep. So white space characters. So /S would match spaces, tabs, and new lines, where /S means anything that's not white space. All right. So this is one that you might find along the lines on the exam. On the exam, I won't have you write too many regular expressions. Instead, what I'll do is I'll give you a regular expression, and I'll ask you, please select the strings that match this, right? So this is very important. It's not select one answer. It's for each of the following, please tell me whether it's matched, right? So it's not, right? You'll have dots to fill in, but it's not a multiple choice. It's a select, right? It's a select multiple, and I repeat that in the exam. But it's very important that you realize that. But I'll give you a string, and I'll say, hey, I'll give you a regular expression, and I'll say which of these strings match, and then sometimes I'll give you a bunch of strings and say which of these regular expressions matches all of these strings, right? So that's it's so, you know, I want, it's easier for you to basically make selections like that and less time consuming. So, all right, so we want to make a regular expression that has 3 parts, okay? Alice eats, basically the first word has to be Alice, Bob, or Carol. The second word is either eats, pets, or throws, and the third word is apples, cats, or baseball. And then the sentence has to end with a period. So the regular expression should be case insensitive. It must match the following, right? Alice eats apples, Bob pets cats, Carol throws baseballs, Alice throws apples, Bob eats cats, right? As I've mentioned, he's a monster. And then, but it should not match RoboCop eats apples, because RoboCop isn't a word there. Alice throws footballs, because while Allison throws is valid, footballs is not. And Carol eats 7 cats, because A, that's monstrous, and B, we don't match a 7 in there. So let's go to regexer and build it, right? All I care about in this one is the regular expression. So regexer. All right, so, and then I'm going to go ahead and just copy these things, hopefully, and hopefully that will work out for us, right? And the reason I say it must not match these is because, or it must not match certain things, is because I don't want you to just be a smart aleck and say /W plus, right? Because, or dots, or rather, not /W, but dot plus, which matches everything. Okay, so let's go ahead and start this. So the first thing we want to do is the easiest part. These should end all, the sentence, it's supposed to be a sentence and it's supposed to end with a period. So let's go ahead and get the period matching, right? A dot is the wildcard character, so we have to escape that by going /period. So I'll do that at the, so I'll put the /period at the end, okay? Right, it's easier if you break these into the parts. So let's start with the first part then now. The first part is that I want a word. I want Alice, Bob, or Carol. So I'll say Alice or Bob or Carol. Okay, and I'll just remove the /W for right now. Sorry, the /period at the end for right now, but it will come back. But I'm just erasing it so we see our stuff on our matches. So see, it will match Alice or Bob or Carol. We use that pipe to do that. Let's make it case insensitive, right? We'll want it with the re.I option, and we can simulate that here with this flag. Next, we need a space, so we'll just literally write in a space. Next, we need eats, pets, or throws, so we open up another group and go eats, pets, or throws, right? This one's fairly straightforward, actually, once you realize that it's not anything nasty. And then you do a space after that and ask for it to do either apples or baseballs or cats. And then we put the period at the end, /period, or then we re-add our period back in, /period. And there, we get these sentences, but we don't get stuff like RoboCop eats apples, right? Because it won't match this because RoboCop doesn't show up, so it doesn't match any part of that.
Professor?
Yep.
How do you do the lowercase again?
In regexer, I would just select over here, but over here you can do re.I. When you're creating regular expressions, you can use re.I when you compile it, right? Yes?
Is there, what was between the parentheses, like a dot or a space?
Spaces. Those dots are just there to see white space. Notice that they're kind of faded. Let me see, flags. Did you? All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this one. Write a script. So this one's very, very much like one you'll see on the exam. Write a script that reads a text file and creates a new text file that is the same as the file that was just read, except all the telephone numbers in the original file have been replaced with the string private. So here we're making use of the .sub function. You can assume all telephone numbers will look like this. Open parentheses, 3 numbers, close parentheses, space, a bunch of 2s, a dash, sorry, 3 numbers, a dash, and then 4 numbers. So area code, 3 digits, 4 digits with the, and separated like this, right? We don't have to worry about anything like really funky going on there, right? Without extensions or dialing 1 or an outbound 9 or something like that, none of that stuff. So what we will do, so let's go ahead and just comment this out up here so we can get our stuff going, and let's go ahead and say def phone replacer. All right, and let's go ahead and just copy the, I'm going to copy this text over here and paste it in. Boom, 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 boom. Let's go ahead and make it more readable. Okay, so there we go. Reads a text file. So in here I'll just assume, well, yes. Yes, but I mean on the exam you can assume RE is already imported. I mean I obviously have to put it in my file, but here. So I'm going to go ahead and just open a file. I will give you a file name to open. So I'll just call it exam.txt, right? The exam, I'll give you something to open, but if you don't know the file name, then you can either, so there's 2 ways this one could be written, right? I just give it a random file name, or I can just simply say file name over here, right, as part of an argument, and then say open file name is equal to data, and then there's a couple things I can do. I can go line by line. Yeah, let's go ahead and do line by line since we do that. Or you can use .read, which will store the entire file in a single string. But I'll do data. So for line in data. The other thing that we're going to need to do is that since we will create a new file that is the same as the text file that has been read. So what we're going to do is we're going to go, we're going to create a new file. We're going to have to write to a new file. Call it output, right, is equal to open output.txt or whatever, but we just give it the right category. Now for, or the right marker, for line in data, what we're going to do is that we're going to have to read that line and find the regular expression in it. So I'm going to go ahead and make that regular expression. Phone regex is equal to, so it will be re.compile. So what is a phone regular expression? It is a open parentheses, so slash open parentheses. Oh, and I'll put an R here so I don't have to escape anything. And then I need 3 digits, so D/D, exactly 3 of them. So exactly 3 digits, followed by a close parentheses. Right? And notice that with all the slashes and the open and close parentheses, that this gives a real indication of why you work on it in a group, so you can, or why you work on it like a small portion at a time, right? Okay, I need 3 digits, and they need to be surrounded by parentheses. Then it needs a space. Then I need 3 more digits. Then I need a dash, and then I need 4 more digits. And that's it. The hardest part is the area code, just simply because of that. Of course, if you did /d/d/d/d/d, that's perfectly fine as well. Okay, so now for line in data, if what we'll do is that we will do re dot, we'll do phone regex dot sub. I believe it's dot sub, and it will replace, and this will replace line. This will replace that regular, any occurrences of that regular expression in line with it says private. So we'll go ahead and store that. Line is equal to line, but is equal to the same line, but replaced with private. Then we have to write that line to the text file. So output dot write line. And actually, for this, because of the way I did it, we don't need a new line, but you can put one in if it makes you feel better. But we don't need a new line because it's actually reading the new lines of the original file because I'm not stripping anything out. Yes?
Can we compile the regex in the for loop?
You could, but it would be kind of wasteful. But it's not gonna affect your exam score or anything if you did it like that. Oh, and now at the very end, output dot close to write your file. So all in all, it's a very short program. Most of the programs you will have to write, most of the methods you will have to write are very, very short. In fact, I know for a fact that one 10-point question can be written in a single line, so, and a not particularly complicated line either. So, you know, so if you know your stuff, then it's going to be a fairly straightforward exam. All right. This one's one of my favorite ones. I've given it as a final practice exam question, as an exam 2 practice exam question, because it's just very good. And you can do it with regular expressions or without regular expressions, so we're going to take a look at both. This one's called, has wildcat given a string word, return true, write a method that, write a function that returns true if it has the string cat in it, but the middle A can be any character. So has wildcat will return false for kitty because it doesn't have C blank T. Tomcat, it will return true because it has CAT. And this leet speak catnip, C4T and 1P, this will return true because the C has a T 2 characters after it, and the middle character is anything. So we can do this with regular expressions or without. So let's take a look at it with regular expressions. Def, it's fairly straightforward if you do it with a regular expression. Has wildcat word. You just have to make the regular expression, which is re.compile. Oh, I've got to save it. So wc regex is equal to re.compile, and the regular expression is a C followed by any character followed by T. Right? Very simple regular expression right there. Okay. Followed by any character there. And now we would just simply have to say if wc dot, if wc regex dot search, if we search this pattern for, sorry, if we search word for this pattern in it, if that gives the result back, return true. Yes?
There's no before the regex expression file.
No, we can just, but it won't affect it for this one. So, but thank you for noticing that. So if we find something using the search function, return true. Otherwise, we return false. We don't even need an else there. Falsa. Yes?
Could you just do return wc-regex.search?
That would return a match object, so it won't return a Boolean. So I was very tempted to do that, and I had to remind myself not to do that. So because search returns a match object, and because it returns something, the if statement will compile that as, oh, it's not a none, it's not a 0. So it must be true. Sorry for being so tired all the time. Let's go ahead and see how we would do it with out regex. So has wildcat nr word. So here, this one's a bit more tricky because we have to be aware of a couple things. So, but it's actually not so bad. I'll be aware that I am going to write this incorrectly, and then I'll have to make a small correction to it, okay? So what we have to do, so by default, we'll return false. We'll return false if we don't see it. This is completely correct, by the way. And then we'll use a for loop and go letter by letter. But actually, we'll go index by index because we care about the index. You know, we care about, if I'm at a certain index, I need to be able to look at the item, at the thing 2 after me. So for index in range len word, right? So for the indices 1 to n, 0 to n minus 1, where n minus 1 is the last possible index, we'll take a look. If we'll say, go ahead and say letter is equal to word at index. We'll grab the letter there, and then we'll say, hey, if letter if that letter is equal to C, well, need that in quotation marks, of course. If the letter is equal to C, then great. Then we might have a wildcat on our hands. We don't care about what the character after that is, right? The character that's after C would be index plus 1. What we care about is the index after that, which is index plus 2. So then we ask ourselves, if word at index plus 2 is equal to the T, then great, I can just return true, right? What you don't want to do is have an else return false, because that means if I'm going to just check the first letter, and if it works, and if I find a cat on my first go, great. Otherwise, I'm going to return false. That's not what you want. You want the return false to be out here after the for loop. So after we've exhausted all of our options. Now this will work except for one small problem. It will go out of bounds, right? If I run this on a word like, this will work for taco cat or any of the examples I posted. But if I try it on a word like tarmac, let's go ahead and take a look at tarmac. Right? Is this a C? Sorry, is this a C? No. 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 What about this? No. Is that a C? Is letter equal to C at index 5? Yes, it is. So ask for the letter at word index plus 2, index 7. Uh-oh, out of bounds. So what we have to do over here is just make sure we don't go out of bounds. So in other words, if we're checking tarmac, I'd want to stop checking after the M, right? Once I've checked the M, I don't need to do that anymore. So if length of word goes up to the C, then length of word minus 1 would go up to the A, and we want to go up to the M, so minus 2. right? And we can always figure that out because since we're checking ahead plus 2, we want to stop 2 before, so we minus 2 over here. You can also simplify this by putting this in, by not having these if statements nested. We can just simply do if letter is equal to C and word index plus 2 is equal to T, right? So those nested if statements can always be condensed into an AND statement. It depends. When should you do each? When should you do which one? It depends on what's more readable or not, right? Whatever. If it makes it more readable to split it up into 2 if statements, split it up into 2 if statements. All right. File reading. Suppose you have a file named numbers.csv which contains a bunch of integers, 5 per line of text separated by commas. So in other words, suppose you have a file that looks like this. So let's go ahead and say we've got a file that looks something like this, right? And I say something like this because the numbers don't actually matter. What matters is that there's 5 numbers and they're all separated by commas, right? It doesn't matter what the numbers are. All that matters is that it's a file made of numbers and they're all separated by commas. Make sense to everybody? That's what a CSV file means, comma separated values. So suppose you have a file named numbers.csv which contains a bunch of integers, 5 per line, separated by lines of commas. Write code below that will open the file, read the numbers from it, and print the sum of all the even numbers in the file. So let's go ahead and def numbers.csv, I'll just call it. Now, we don't have to ask what the file name is because guess what? I just told you what it was. It's called numbers.csv. So data is equal to open numbers.csv. We're going to open it in read mode. And what we're trying to do is a running total. So let's go ahead and say a total equals 0, right? Because we're going to be adding all the numbers that are multiples of 2 to it that we find in this file. Okay? So for line in data. Great. So we've got our line, and it will look something like this, where we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 5, right? Or it'll look like one of these lines. So the function we want to use here is the split function. So So numbers is equal to numbers.split, and we want to split them over, and you can use a regular expression with the split function, by the way, but we don't need anything advanced and fancy. We just say split over commas. Yes, line.split over here. And that will take the line and it will split it up into multiple lines. That will create basically a list out of that string, right? Let's see. Right, let's take a look over here in the shell, right? Line is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Line dot split over comma gives you this string 1, comma string 2, comma string 3, comma string 4, comma string 5. So we can't exactly add up the even numbers yet or check if anything's even because the numbers are still, you know, they're still strings. So we need to turn them into integers. So for number in numbers, so for every number in that line of numbers, what are we going to do? We're going to say number is equal to int number. So turn that number into an integer and store it where it was. And then ask ourselves, is it divisible by 2? If number mod 2 equals 0, total we want to add that number to the total. So total is equal to total plus number. Return total. Yes?
Can you just use an even number regex to do this and like do it a different way?
I
That's how I did it. I was like,
So checking if the number's 2, 4, if the
yeah, you have like D/D, then a star, then 24680, and then turn the list into an integer, and then isolate each of the even numbers, and then.
did it work did it work when you tested it?
Yeah.
Then it's fine.
Would it be fine on the exam? Though?
Yes.
Okay.
So my overall rule is that if on the exam, if it fills the requirements of the method, then and it's a working solution, then it works. You need not feel constrained to, on my exams, you need not feel constrained by just what you've been taught in class too. You can use, if you know how to use the filter function or how to use lambda expressions, so you could do lambda int. So for instance, you decide to do this, right? We had line. So we had line split there, but if somebody said, hey, I want to do lambda int to that, let's see, invalid syntax. Why is it invalid syntax? Oh, not lambda. If you want to do map int to that and then turn that into a list, if you knew how to do that, you're more than welcome to. Right? And that turns it into a list of numbers. And then if you decide, hey, I also know how to do filter, right? And my filter is going to be x mod 2 = 0. Lambda x colon x mod 2 is equal to 0, right? List. And then throw that in a sum, which if you're just looking in on horror, what I've done is essentially most of that program in the same line. I could probably do most of it in one line by just basically going. I think I can do most of that program in one line. But if you know how to use lambda expressions and know how to do the functional aspects of Python, you're more than welcome to use that in this class. You can use anything. If it's something you know, you can use it on the exam. Okay? It's not this. Wouldn't be the first time I've had to look up something that a student put down on the exam to check if it was a real thing, and then find out that was a real thing I didn't know about. Awesome. It's happened a number of times. If you're not learning, you're dead. All right. That's not a threat. That's just kind of like you're always learning. Okay. So this one is kind of a hint, hint, nudge, nudge. I hope you really did that. You understood the Pig Latin one, because this is using the same exact skills as the question you did for Pig Latin. All right. So if the string begins with un, we return it without the un. We take off the un. Otherwise, we return unadded to the front of it. We can assume the string is at least 3 characters long. So un or untied gives us tied. Unable gives us able. Necessary becomes unnecessary. A word necessary is a word, by the way, that I always have trouble spelling for some reason. Okay, def, un or un, right? So the question is whether or not this word will start with the string un. So in Java, the easiest way was to find out that there was a starts with method, but here it's actually pretty easy to just do slice notation, right? So if word the first two characters, which is 0 through 2, if that slice is equal to awesome. Then we want to return the string without added to it, right? Not equal to. If word is equal to awesome, then we want to strip out that the first two characters. So that means that we just have to do this. Word to the end, right? And for those people who are seriously doubting me right now, awesome, you should do that because I'm not infallible. But let's go ahead and run this through Python just to double check. Word, I mean, I know it works, but I'm kind of just demonstrating for you, right? So let's say word is equal to unable, right? So word 0 through 2, does that give us are the first two characters of it? It gives us the character starting from 0 up to, but not including index 2. So it gives us 0 and 1, which is Great, so that will return true. Oh, my bad. Why did I put a 0 here? That won't give us anything. 2, colon. Right, 2, start at this one, go to, and you can either put a len of word over here, right? It will go up to, but not include index length of word, which is one above the last possible index. Or if you just leave it blank, it will assume you want to go to the end of the word. I have no idea why I hit the 0 afterwards. Okay. Especially since I went over it yesterday for students. Otherwise, and we don't even need an else statement here, but I'm going to go ahead and do that because I'm sure a lot of you will. Otherwise, we know it doesn't start with That means we want to add an to the beginning of the word. So we just simply do plus word. And that will concatenate with word. Fairly straightforward one. Yes? You can if you want to. It's not really going to make a difference if you use .lower or .strip or anything like that. Right? All we care about, does it have at the beginning? If you do it to lower, that's not going to help or hurt, right? Because you're allowed to assume that it's just going to give. I can say, because if you ask me on the exam, should it match capital U? I'm going to tell you, you can assume that everything is undercase or lowercase. Right? All right, so this one is one of those that are easy if you know it, and also easy if you don't know the super secret cheat code. Okay? Min-max diff. Given a list of integers, right? In other words, given a list of numbers, give me the difference between the maximum element and the minimum element. In other words, find the biggest thing and the smallest thing and subtract them. Right? But I can't write give me the biggest thing and smallest thing and subtract them because I don't know. I feel like there's a certain level of professionalism I'm supposed to keep. But anyway, give me the biggest thing and the smallest thing and subtract them. You can assume that there's at least two things. Okay. So, all right. Python, of course, is super friendly about the way this works. It is actually sickening. This used to be actually something you have to actually slightly work at. If you're in Java. In Python, on the other hand, all you have to do is use the magical max and min functions that are built into Python. Return max of numbers minus min of numbers. That's the biggest thing minus the smallest thing. Ta-da, right? Okay, but what if you didn't have the super secret magical functions or didn't know about them, right? Because I couldn't remember whether or not I went over them, and I guess I did. So, or they're not exactly hidden, right? They're not actually that secret. What we could do, though, over here instead is that we would need, if we didn't know how to do that, we'd have to do a for loop. So what we would do is we'd create a variable called the biggest, set that equal to, let's make it the first thing. And for this thing, we want to make it the very first thing in the list. We'll just assume that the first thing in the list is the biggest thing, rather than selecting like 0 or something like that. And then, because if all the numbers are negatives, then setting it equal to 0 would give us 0 being the biggest thing, which isn't a number in there. So, numbers is, so we're going to assume that the biggest thing is the first thing and the smallest thing is the first thing for right now, until we're proven otherwise. Yes?
I mean, like, should we just sort the list first, though?
No need to. It's a solution, but you don't need to sort the list. Right? Right, if you sort the list, then, which is, so I suppose another solution you could do is numbers, you can use numbers is equal to sorted, right, numbers. And then, actually sorted just will sort numbers. I think it sorts it in place. And then all you have to do is then, you know, subtract the last index from the first index. Right, so that's another way to do that. But let's just go ahead and go through this. Biggest numbers, smallest numbers. For num in numbers, if the current number I'm looking at is greater than the biggest number, guess what? That's actually the biggest number. So stored the number in biggest, because that's the new biggest number, because it was bigger than the previously bigger number. Okay? Yeah. If the number, on the other hand, is smaller than the smallest number we've found so far, guess what? That's our new smallest number. Right? If it's smaller than the smallest number we've seen so far, then it becomes our new smallest number. And then we can just do return the biggest minus the smallest. You can also, if you needed to, have split it up into 2 for loops, one to find the biggest number, one to find the smallest number, but there's no reason why you can't find them both at the same time. I like having problems that have many different valid solutions. Right, let me go back to it so I see people scribbling down still. Okay. There's a lot of valid solutions to a lot of the problems. There's no one way to skin a cat. I don't know why that's a saying. There's no one way to handle a single problem in programming. There are just solutions that are more efficient, and some are less efficient, and some that look better. All right, let's keep going. Swap ends. Given a list of numbers, modify the list such that the first and last elements are swapped. You can assume that the list will have 2 or more elements in it. Okay, to swap numbers, so here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're going to change the list to 5, 2, 3, 4, 1, right? The 5 and the 1 swapped, the first and last element swapped. Here, 15, 31, 21, 17, 18, right? 31, 21, 17 stays put, but 15 and 28 swap with each other. And here on the last one, the -1 and the 100 swap with each other. Okay. Okay. So def swap ends, not a particularly hard one either. But here what you need to use is something called you need to use a temporary variable, right? You might go, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the last item stored in the first item, right? So I'll say, hey, numbers 0 is equal to numbers, length of numbers -1, which gets you the last element in numbers. Or we can just simply do -1 to get the last element, right? And then you might say, okay, then that means that what I need to do is do numbers, -1 is equal to numbers 0. What's the problem here? What did I just mess up? Yes?
Your numbers
Yep.
Switch it to the last number and then switch it back.
It's not that I switched it back. I copied it to both, right. Right. What I did is that what I did is that if my list was, my list was, stop. If my list was as follows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then this first line did this. And then my second line said, okay, we're going to copy 5 into the last index. Great. So what I need to do is I have to actually create a temporary variable to store that. So here's what we'll do. I'll say temp is equal to numbers 0. And now what I'll do is the first move I do is I create a temp variable over here, 1. Then I take the last item, put it in the first location, and then I'll say, instead of numbers 0, I'll say temp. Take temp and store it in the last number. There's pretty much no way to do it without the temp. Well, actually, there is a way to do it without the temp, which is using some very, very clever addition, which was actually on the first exam. The first exam where I had you go through the code and ask you what the values of A and B after this, that was actually a nice, clever bit of code that swaps two numbers without having to have a temporary variable. Fun with addition. Okay? And you don't need to return anything because it just said to modify the list. But returning it won't hurt. All right, so let's see if I remember this one, because this one's not one of mine. It's one I stole from CodingBat. We'll say a value is everywhere if an array, read list, it is everywhere in a list if for every pair of adjacent elements, at least one of the pairs is that value. Return true if the given value is everywhere in the array. So is everywhere in this list, is 1 everywhere in this list? Well, 1 and 2, one of those is 1. 2 and 1, one of those is 1. And 1 and 3, one of those is 1. So return true. Whereas over here, is 2 everywhere in this list? 1 and 2, one of those is 2. 2 and 1, one of those is 2. 1 and 3, one of those is not 2. You might be asking, what is the point of this? And the answer is to annoy the heck out of students. But it's actually good practice of out of bounds as well as it's good practice of out of bounds and index manipulation. Here, another one over here. 1 and 2, 1 is there. 2 and 1, 1 is there. 1 and 3, 1 is there. 3 and 4, 1 isn't there, so return false. So let's go ahead and do this one. This is one that's on CodingBat. CodingBat has a number of good problems for you that are of your skill level right now. We can't just go. So what we know is that basically we're going to be looking at this pair, and then this pair. That means that I'm always going to be looking 1 to the right, which means that if once I get to the end, I don't want to look 1 to the right anymore because I'll go out of bounds at that point. So for index in range len nums, go through all the numbers except for the last one, right? Because I'm going to be looking 1 to the right. And what we'll do is we'll get the left value. Left is equal to the index I'm currently at, nums index. And the right value is equal to the one to the right, which is index plus 1. Right? 1 to the right. So now what we can ask is, if neither, if basically, so now we have to, now one of those has, in order for this, so what we're going to do is that we are going to assume that these are, that basically it is everywhere. So I'm going to assume that it's true. Right? You will assume the case that's easy to disprove in a lot of problems like this. So here it's going to say it's easy to show that it isn't everywhere, if that's the case. So I'll assume that it's true, and then I'll look for the condition where that would disprove it. And if neither left or right are equal to the, so if left is not equal to val, and right is not equal to val, I'll return false. And that's it. Right? What I'll do is I'll say, okay, for the left side of the pair, I'll get it, and the right side of the pair, so the left side of the pair is the one I'm currently at, the right side of the pair is the one to the right of me. Because I'm looking at the one to the right of me, because I'm looking 1 over, that means I want to not go, that means I have the potential of going out of bounds, so I stop looking at one before that. So I say to myself, hey, if the left of the pair is the value, and the right of the if the left of the pair is not that value, and the right of the pair is not equal to that value, then neither of those are the values, so that value isn't everywhere, so return false. And then I have the return true outside of the for loop. This is very important. You do not, under any circumstances, want a else return true, because then it will just stop after the first pair, right? Either the first pair will be that, or the second pair will be, or either the first pair will determine it that it's not there, or it is there. Right? If you have that else into there, basically it's saying, hey, we're going to return true on the first pair regardless. That return true being outside of the for loop, that means that it will only return true after it's gone through every single pair. Okay, let's see. Okay. So this one should be fairly straight. This one I've included because, and I've done 2 of these, some digit string. So last time we had like digit product on the exam, right? Where I given a and that was given a number, right? Give me the product of all the digits, right? Remember that from exam 1, right? So on this practice exam, I have 2 things relating to digit. So hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Okay? So given a string, return the sum of the digits 0 to 9 that appear in the string, ignoring all other characters. Okay. Return 0 if there are no digits in the string. All right, and so we can use the is digit to test if a string S is a 0 through 9 if we wanted to. But basically, we see, notice what this one does. It says sum string digits AA1 BC2 D3, and adds all the things that are digits in there. So it's 6. AA11 B33 gives us 8, the sum of all the digits in there. It ignores everything that's not a digit. And then chocolate, it just gives me 0 back. So let's go ahead and take a look at how this one will work. So sum string digits. Okay, total is equal to 0 for letter in word. So we're going to go through everything. If letter dot is digit. Now, if letter is digit. For letter in word, if the letter is a digit. Let's see, is that, it's all lowercase, by the way. Yep, is digit. So if letter is a digit, then congratulations, that means it's a number. So I'll say number is equal to letter, but thrown into an integer. right? Convert that letter into an integer. And then say total is equal to total plus number. And yes, we could condense that line to total is equal to total int letter. Return total, right? And if we wanted to prove this works, I could say print sum string digits hello 1 2 3 world with a 1 there, so that should be 7. And then I've got an error on line 20. It's preventing me from running the entire program. 4-line in data. Oh, forgot to close a parentheses over here. 7. So that works. That one's a fairly straightforward one where we just go through a string and turn it into a digit. Right? So I gave you a semi-related problem over here as well. Given an integer, return the, so not given a string here, given an integer, return the sum of the digits 0 through 9 in that integer. Right? And so for this one, because it's not a string, we have to use modulo arithmetic. So total is equal to 0. We'll return total at the end. And what we need to do is we have to get the so while num is greater than 0, in other words, while there's still a value there to add, we get the last digit. So last digit is equal to number modulo 10, right? That gets you the remainder of the number when it's divided by 10, which is the last digit. Yes? Oh, if num is not equal to 0, there we go. While num is not equal to 0. Last digit mod 10 will give, this line will give you the last digit. And then num is equal to num divided by 10. We'll throw away the last digit. And then we can add that last digit that we just threw away. Total is equal to last digit. Total is equal to total plus last digit. So it's very straightforward to do that. So let's go ahead and see with 581. Oh, interesting. Mod 10. 5. What? Oh, my bad. Double division. Completely forgot that's a thing in Python. Oh, that's interesting. Num is equal to the last digit. All right. This is not. Let's go ahead and check it for 581. 14. So why doesn't it work for the negative? Yep. Whatever. Num is equal to num times negative. There's no real need for it. I just don't know why. I assume it has to do with the way modular arithmetic works on negative numbers. So oversight on my part there. Okay. Yeah. If we wanted it to work with negative numbers, all we had to do is say if num is less than 0, num is equal to num times negative 1, which would flip it to positive. Okay, let's keep going with these questions. All right, the last question on the exam, by the way, I know I just skipped one, but the last question on the exam we don't need to care about because I'm not testing you on dictionaries over here. So 16 should be the last one, which is given a list of positive integers. Return a new list of length count containing the first even numbers from the original array. The original array will contain at least count even numbers. Oof, what a pain. This one is just one of those other, again, it's a contrived problem, but it's a valuable one. So copy evens, right? What it's saying is that I'd like the first two evens of this list, right? Here's my list, here's the two, so that means I'd like the first two evens. So that'll be 2 and 4, right? I'd like the first three evens, which will be 2, 3, 8, 2, 4, 8. And then I'd like the first three evens of this one, which will again be 6, 2, and 4. So what we do is for num in nums. All right. Also, we have a count. We have a certain number. So let's see, totals. Let's go ahead and also, we'll need a num found as well. Because we need to keep track of the number of evens we found so far. So for number in numbers, if num is even, so if num mod 2 equals 0, then we want to, we'll need a list to store it in, right? So output is equal to empty list. Output dot append num. And then num found is equal to num found plus 1. Okay. But now we need to make, now this will add every item to, this will add every even number to output. We want to return output. But now we want to make sure that we only get the first n numbers of we want only the first count numbers of output. So there's a couple ways to do this. The first is that we can just simply ignore this whole num found, by the way, and just use the easy peasy slice notation that that Python orders us, and we can just simply do count over here and say, hey, everything below index count, so from 0 to n minus 1 to count minus 1, which is a grand total of count numbers, everything below index count we don't want. And that would work. Another thing that would work is, that's a bit more straightforward, is to say, hey, rather than wasting our time by adding things we don't need, we can say, hey, if num found is equal to count now, if we found the maximum number, we can then use a break statement to break out of the loop. All right. Yes? You could use a while loop for this as well. There's, if it works, then it works. Yes?
So dictionaries will not be on the exam.
Dictionaries will not be on the exam. I decided that was a wiser choice. It was a wiser choice to limit your. I decided it was a wise choice to limit the amount of material I was going to torture you with. I can't really answer what you should put on your cheat sheet, but your cheat sheet, I find so I feel the need to quote Eisenhower right now, which is that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. So the act of creating the cheat sheet is much more valuable than actually than your actual cheat sheet, is what I'm saying. So what I would do is that when it comes to your cheat sheet, I would basically review the material that I feel that I know that I would put on the cheat sheet, the stuff that I feel the weakest on, okay? And that includes both on the exam and on the labs. Specifically, I wouldn't necessarily write down full programs, because if you are working on writing down full programs to include on your cheat sheet, then you might just blindly copy paste that. Instead, like, focus on the aspects of programs from your lab or the practice exam that you find are most useful. Yes. Which one was that one? Swap in? Sure.